You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hi, Andreas. It's Jana, and I am here with Courtney Olsen, and so I'm going to get us right in. It is 1:48, so 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to Oh My Health, There's Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short. Today, our very special guest is Courtney Olsen. Courtney is an accredited Olympic lifting, kettlebell, and CrossFit coach, a laughter yoga and Psych-K master facilitator, as well as the mfCEO of women empowerment clothing company GRRRL, which is GRRRL. If you need more convincing of her credentials, she's the OG Australian women's arm wrestling champion, a Queensland State Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion, 3-time international bodybuilding competitor, and best-selling author of the TV personality. And if you think you've seen Courtney before, it's probably because you've seen her crushing watermelons with her thighs on the internet or TV, or being described as the woman with the world's deadliest thighs by Stan Lee. Bless his heart. I just miss him so much. Creator of the Marvel Comics, a title she holds with pride. Well, welcome to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast, Courtney.
Thank you. That is a mouthful for a short bio. So great work.
Well, I am totally staying away from your thigh zone.
Yeah, I usually use that when I call into banks or airlines and I say, "You've seen the girl that smashes watermelons between their legs?" And often it's a yes. Sometimes it's a no and my ego gets sad. But usually when it's a yes, I said, yes, then don't screw up. It was, oh, okay. So I use it to all sorts of advantages.
I love it. Well, one of the things we do here on the show is I ask everyone to share a story of hope. It doesn't have to be a physical element. It's like something that empowered you, that came out of hope. Because I honestly believe our stories, when we share them, create this beautiful ripple effect in the world that creates change. So do you want to share your story of hope with us?
Absolutely. I would love to. I have a lot of stories of hope. So condensing it down and just picking one might be a challenge, but I'll go with what comes up first, because I think we often override that and overlook our intuition a lot. And I find that the universe often gives us the right answer if we just go with our gut, So my story of hope in a snapshot would be to anyone who's listening who is dissatisfied with their body, who absolutely hates their body. I grew up my entire life wanting to be Kate Moss. And for those of you who are too young to remember who Kate Moss was, she was the Calvin Klein heroin chick, was her AKA, the very thin waif looking model who was the poster child in the 90s. And so growing up with her as my dream body, and I being the future woman with the world's deadliest thighs, it was quite a challenge to achieve that when her legs were basically the size of my forearms at the age of 8 years old. So, it was a super long journey for me to get to a place of accepting my body. And I would just like everybody to know, and this includes men, men and women both. And sometimes men even have it more so because men aren't encouraged to talk about their emotions and feelings by society, and you're laughed at if you do. So men have just as much body image issues as women do. But, in my experience, it was a very, it was like an erratic heart rate monitor, real highs and real lows. And I could never really seem to bring it down into a place of neutrality and acceptance. And for me, it was a super gradual process. And, if you're there and you're like how I was, where you could just catch one glimpse of something about your body that you dislike. For me, mine was my baggy kneecaps. And I always wanted the big teardrop muscle that is called the VMO that men develop really well around the top of their knees. And I could never get that to come out. And so every time I would see that, it would ruin my day. Or a little bit of cellulite, those things that make us human. And I would just go down a complete dark tunnel and allow it to dictate a lot of my life choices, which weren't so great, but eventually it does get better, and I think as we age, it is something to look forward to, and it becomes more of a place of empowerment, and it's not something to be feared. So if you're hating your body and you're dissatisfied with it, know that this too shall pass, and that eventually, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, you will find that peace with your body.
Well, I'm on that age side, so I can tell you that that is absolutely true, because you get to a point where like, I don't care.
Yeah.
My heart's still going right. I'm still breathing. I'm happy. I'm grateful. I remember I had to have a double mastectomy, and my doctor was more concerned than I was. I'm like, I've already had all my children. They've done their job, and I'm totally okay with that. And I really was okay with
Right.
that. You're right. I just wanted to survive and be healthy and happy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Your priorities change a lot,
They do. We
Yeah.
could tell that to our younger self, right? To like just relax.
Oh, 100%. I literally just yesterday on our brand Instagram page, we recirculated a campaign we did 3 years ago where we asked our community to write a letter to your younger self. How would you speak to her? What would you say? What kind of empathy would you have? And it's so true. We are so hard on ourselves. And at the end of the day, it's I think we're really at a tipping point though in humanity where, women are really starting to wake up and take back their power and pick up barbells and get into exercise for the point of enjoyment and getting strong, as opposed to looking at it as a chore of weight loss and needing to lose 10 pounds to fit into a wedding dress or whatever the case may be. Some days it feels like it's a mountain we'll never be able to climb to the top of, but every revolution starts with a small group of people. And I believe it is growing exponentially, and that our next generation of future leaders will be living in a much different world 10 years from now. So I have hope.
I do too. And I'll tell you what, if we can just talk a little bit about body image to young women, and I don't even mean teenagers, I mean women who are having new moms that are having babies and their bodies don't bounce back exactly. Like, your body is beautiful. God doesn't make any mistakes. I'm telling you, you are beautiful in any skin you are in, because that is the way it's supposed to be. But I think back, because I was that mom and I shamed my daughters. I have 3 daughters, and if they started gaining a little weight or they just didn't fit into that box, I would say, you need to do this, or you should be doing that. And I look back now as a mom, horrified that I did that. And here's the thing, when you get to be my age, you get something called a do-over, and they're called grandkids. Oh. And you're like, I don't care. Yeah. Are you happy? And you get to do it over. And I look back as a mom, horrified from some of the things I told my beautiful daughters that fit them in that mold that was supposed to be, out there in the world. Thank goodness they never listened to me.
Oh, it's absolutely true. But the fact that you're aware of it is the biggest part of the puzzle. So many people, as humans, we go through life without any level of awareness of what's happening on a subconscious level. And the programming that we receive from ages 0 to 7 is everything. It's like 70% of our beliefs that we create during that time. And those beliefs are just passed on to us from our parents, from our grandparents, from society. The societal beliefs that women are the weaker sex. And going back to that part where you said, women becoming new mothers. And that's a big part of, when I crush this watermelon and I do this stunt, the conversation is, have you had a child? Okay, great. You have. Let's talk about that. You just rearranged all of your internal organs, created magic, and then had the equivalent of having like every bone broken in your body, somehow miraculously forgot about the pain. And then most of you decide you want to do it again. And it's amazing. And you go on with your life the very next day. Whereas my husband gets kicked in the balls and it's game over, or he gets the flu and he's completely down for the count. Women, we have a pain threshold that is through the roof. We are capable of enduring so much. And so I get so mind boggled when I stop and I think, like, how long we've been in this upside down power struggle where, we are the ones being violated and hurt and held down and, subjected to all of these things when really we're the strong ones. And I'm here to remind you that women have bigger hips for childbearing. Therefore, we're able to put on more mass. That's why we have bigger legs. And if I had $1 for every time a man said to me, God, I wish I had your legs, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. We'd be hanging out on my island, drinking non-alcoholic mojitos or something. Because I get naked and punch people when I drink. I can't drink. That's another story of hope. But, reminding women that we are the givers of life. We are powerful beyond imagination. And it is this programming from society that says otherwise. It's all the media ads, the books, the music videos of seeing violence against women happen that program us to think that we are the weaker sex. And it's not true, and I'm often, a lot of times people put me into a category of being a feminist, which at the end of the day, I suppose I am. Sometimes I don't identify really with that term, but it's gender equality, and women, we get so caught up. And like you said, you need, as you were talking about your daughters, you need to fit in this box and you need to lose weight, or, this isn't right. And, that it's the fact that we're all becoming aware of it now and changing the conversation. And because of podcasts like this, these things are able to have a place to happen. And then solutions come about and we reshape society. So it's fantastic.
We just recently had a political discussion around our house where one of my daughters said, we'll never see a female president, never in my lifetime. And I started laughing. I said, when you think about it, a female's been in office since the very beginning of office. Those men didn't birth themselves. They didn't raise themselves. That whole being that they are was created from a woman. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously a woman and a man, but they have their mother behind them. I'm sure if they're still alive, when they were in office, they were getting mama's approval. And we have shaped the way this planet is, right? And there's so much more for us to do. And we don't give ourselves credit that, yeah, I'm doing that.
Absolutely correct. And it's funny. I would love to talk to your daughter. I'll say, I'm going to disagree. I text Tulsi occasionally, quite often, and remind her, I'm like, 2024 is around the corner. Let's go. Let's get ready. So I believe it will happen. And, that was my goal all throughout my youth, was to be the first female president of the United States. And as a senior in high school with a 4.0 GPA in a Christian rock band, attending a Catholic high school, ASB president, captain of the cheerleading team, started the first girls golf team, all of these things, I wound up smoking methamphetamines because I was so desperate to be thin, even though I knew better. And then, of course, that completely turned my life around and went through a whole series of events, from experiencing a rape to being a full-blown drug addict and alcoholic and diagnosed with an eating disorder and depression by the age of 21, whereas I had the whole world at my fingertips. But because I was so wrapped up in body image, and this was before social media, this was when we were talking about print ads and television. And, thank gosh, I didn't have Instagram and all the rest of these apps at my fingertips as a young person, so but I do believe that there are, as much as the millennials and the generations below them, I feel sometimes I'm like, y'all need to harden up a bit. Okay. We have too many safe spaces, too many trigger warnings. Let's face this stuff head on, But that being said, they have started a lot of conversations that other generations previously have not touched with a 10-foot pole. So, it's, I think we're making a ton of progress, and things are moving in a super interesting direction. And I think we will see a lot more women in power. And that is why we are in the situation that we are right now today. Trying to unpack what's going on in the Middle East right now. I spent a couple hours, looking at both sides and really trying to understand the history. And every time I look at something like this, it always comes down to the same equation. And that is that there are just simply not enough women in power. There's not enough women sitting around the table having conversations around, what needs to happen. And they're saying we're the emotional ones, but I just want to reflect back on some politicians on both sides, some of their tweets and tantrums. And I'm like, okay.
By the way, I think that emotion has a place in politics. You have to have a feeling, you have to have that. You can't just be a wall and go here, go left, go right. So I think that women bring a lot to the table. What would you say to young women? Because body image is huge. I personally know of people who have literally commit suicide because they weren't comfortable in their skin or in their sex gender, or it's sad. And it should be the most empowering thing you have is your presence, whatever that is, and whoever you are. And it is scary. It's scary sometimes stepping into your truth. But I'm telling you, once you do, it's like ripping that Band-Aid. It's never as bad as you thought it was going to be. Sometimes it feels like it is, but I promise you it's never as bad. Yep. What would you say to young women who are having body issues and they're starving themselves, or they're taking the diet pills, to try to lose the weight or whatever the fat is now?
That's a really good question. I would say the number one thing is self-awareness. If we don't have awareness of a problem, then there's no problem to solve. And that really is spending more time with ourselves and asking questions. We got to be willing to do the work to find out, okay, well, what's driving this? What is it that is causing me to want to fill this void in my soul? And for myself, it wasn't until, and I've got a remarkably long story. I think I mentioned to you, my book wound up being 500 pages, my addiction body image memoir. And a third of this book, the middle section, was this discovery of finding this muscle fetish wrestling underground world in my mid-20s. And I was just blown away because, I as I mentioned, was highly addicted to methamphetamines, and then that more alcohol, prescription pain pills, narcotics, Oxycontin. It was a hot mess. And my way out was getting into bodybuilding. And whilst doing that, I discovered this world where men were willing to pay me hundreds of dollars an hour to demonstrate strength. I'm talking about arm wrestling, picking them up and carrying them around. It's called lift and carry. To wrestling them, to choking them out with my legs, or around their ribs. They just feel the strength of my legs. Just all these various things, no sex, and I'd publicly write about this stuff because I thought it was so fascinating. And even whilst I was doing it though, I was still never good enough. I was too worried that I had cellulite or dimples, or, I wasn't ripped up enough. But no one that I ever saw or, made these videos for, it had never once crossed their mind. It was all purely up in my mind. And it wasn't until, I didn't do it for a very long period of time. And in fact, that's where I started crushing watermelons between my legs. Was one of my, clients said, do you think you could do this? And I'm like, sure, I'll give it a go. And just so happened to, crush it, which takes 240 pounds of pressure, which is amazing. And, I still wasn't able, because, sometimes when you're in a situation, you don't really realize what's going on until sometime afterwards, even though you hear the whispers going on in your head, like, this isn't really great. You should probably stop doing this. And, you're taking more pain pills because you're wrestling and hurting your back, but you need the money. You're having these subtle conversations, but you don't really realize how bad it is. Or if you're in that relationship that's abusive, it's not great, but somehow you still stay in it. And it was like I knew that this was something was amazing about this, but I still couldn't piece it together until sometime after the fact. But to think that I spent my entire life wanting to be Kate Moss and having a thigh gap and, being this polished stone and looking like a cloud, which is impossible because we're human and we have pores and cellulite and wrinkles and all the rest of it. To then discovering this whole world, and I'm talking about all walks of life, all different backgrounds and professions and ages and areas, to where these men really just wanted to experience pure female strength. And I thought, how is it that this has been, my whole life I've been chasing this thigh gap, and here's some guy paying me $400 for this hour to crush a watermelon between my legs to show how strong I am. Do you know what I mean? Like, just realizing that the world is not what we think it is. And what women are told is considered beautiful is what's on the cover of a magazine because someone's trying to sell us something. And the rest of the world that's out there sees beauty in the most remarkable different ways that we could ever fathom. I get fans wanting me to grow out my armpit hair because armpit hair is the most attractive thing that they've ever seen on a woman. And it would often relate to certain areas. And again, that's why I had to write about that in this book, because it just blew my mind, and how much we have been conditioned as women to read a Vogue magazine or, a Cosmopolitan and think that this is the next thing we need, or, oh, this celebrity is what's in, and, oh, I got to cut my hair like that. And, oh, big hair now. And now the trend is this. It's like, no, that's all there is an industry to keep us in this perpetual state of never being able to fill a void within our soul. And until we all join hands and link together and say enough is enough, and start loving ourselves and each other, more importantly, it's not going to change. So, again, that part really, really blew my mind because I just had no idea. Not a clue.
You live in Las Vegas in Australia.
Yeah.
And I live in Studio City, which is surrounded by studios.
Yeah.
My husband is a veterinarian, basically to the stars. Like everyone that comes to him is like top end celebrity. And I can promise you every single celebrity I met doesn't look anything like what they do on TV. They're beautiful. Don't get me wrong. They are beautiful, stunning creatures, both men and women. But they don't look like that on television. They're showing up with their hair a mess, in sweats. They're real. Like you probably wouldn't even recognize half of them. You know how I recognize most of them? The sound of their voice.
Yeah.
That voice is familiar, and I turn around and my head puts it together. But they aren't like what you're seeing on magazines. That's not real. It's just not that they're not beautiful. They are, right. But it is not real. It's not really attainable for us.
No, it is absolutely not. And what is frightening and absolutely terrifying now is the technology that exists for especially young people to manipulate their videos, like Facetune. I've never used these things, but it is so easy to just, even the most basic filter in stories on Instagram, it's the first swipe. It's called, I want to say peach. I can't remember, but even that gives you this purified look, even though it seems harmless and simple. But from, the impact that Snapchat, for example, which has, now it's TikTok, and TikTok has even more creepy AI features than Snapchat ever did, but with the big silly dog ears and, princess stars and cat whiskers, and it seems so harmless. And I see not as much now because again, it's now TikTok is a trend, but when Snapchat was a huge thing, for like a 5-year period, I would see so many parents and with their kids putting these filters and stuff on. And I'm like, do you understand that we are creating beliefs from within the womb? And that is scientifically proven. That is a fact. Everybody, if you've never heard of Dr. Bruce Lipton, his book, The Biology of Belief, it is absolutely amazing to learn how beliefs control everything. And we are creating this stuff on a subconscious level from those ages. There was my friends had me crush a watermelon, and their son was like 2.5 years old. And I didn't think he would remember, he's 2.5. He couldn't even really talk. And she just messaged me a month ago, and this is, he's now 4.5. And she brought home a watermelon, and he said, "You do like Courtney. She crushed like ninja," or, was carrying on. And she just like, "I couldn't believe he remembered that." And I'm like, yeah, even from that young of an age, we are creating this stuff about ourselves. So when we see, these images, and especially children, of completely falsified, even though it seems so fun and innocent, it is having a detrimental impact. And we're not going to see that actual outcome of that for some time now yet, but you look at the amount of mental health issues that are just skyrocketing, even with post-COVID. The National Eating Disorder Association saw a 70% increase in calls to their call center just in 2020 alone, so we're, I think, at this critical mass where, people are really starting to wake up. And even though on some days I find myself getting annoyed around thinking, oh, well, is this PC? And can we say that anymore? And, just yesterday I said steward and stewardess for, like on an airline. And I'm like, can we even say that anymore? And I'm like, but the reality is, we either evolve or die. And we're in this position now where we get to have these conversations and to talk about these things, and to not internalize it and think that, we are unworthy and worthless, and that we do have so much more, especially as women, especially when it comes to our thought capabilities. Like, we have so much more to think about, as opposed to, I have some blue veins here. I've got some spider veins on my leg, and my double chin's coming out. I got wrinkles now, hair's receding. I've got gray hair. I'm getting bingo wings, and we're starting to have these conversations at like 30. And it's like, okay, well, how about we start looking at wealth redistribution? Like, why is there a concentrated amount of wealth in the hands of the 1%? Or, like, women, we have so much more important things to be focusing on and talking about. So I think it's starting to change. And I think we've hit that tipping point. And again, having podcasts like this, having authentic conversations, and just being true and real about this stuff, I think is how we're moving forward.
I think that we like to refer to that as cover value. So people think their surface is their cover value. And the truth of the matter is, everything inside is what is really their value. So I wish people could hear this message, and it's going to take time. I mean, if you have real issues about who you are, it takes some work. But if you can put in the work, there is no mistakes. You are exactly how you're meant to be.
Yeah.
So just show up in that space and learn to thrive in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I just watched Saturday Night Live, and Elon Musk. I have a daughter who has Asperger's, and she's a doctor. Like, she's amazing, but she had a struggle getting to this place.
Right.
But here he is talking about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, people in that position never talked about having any kind of mental health issues.
Right.
And I love that he said, well, yeah, I do.
Right.
Yeah, here I am. And I feel like any issue we perceive that we have physically, mentally, emotionally, could turn out to be not our kryptonite, but our superpower.
That's exactly right. 100%. And I say, how do you flip the script? And instead of thinking like, oh, I have a disease, because as an alcoholic and an addict, that's considered a mental illness. I have a disease. And I say, well, it's just dis-ease. That means the opposite of ease. That's it. And at the end of the day, when that comes with a slight touch of OCD, I get stuff done. We're driven, we're hyper-focused. Like, you can't tell me no. Try tell me no. Watch what happens. If you can flip the script and look at it, it's all about perspective. At the end of the day, it's like, really, and that old adage, is the glass half full or is it half empty? It's like, we get to make the choice and to run with that, and I think that is absolutely powerful. And you're absolutely right.
Can you do me a favor and hold up your book? Because this also goes on
Oh,
YouTube. And I just
yeah.
want to have a quick peek of it. So, oh my gosh. So I am going to definitely link everyone so that they can get a copy of your book. I think that that is fun. And people were saying killing it. I'm like, can we just not use that word? Kill anything, but we could absolutely crush it. So I love the title of your book.
Thank you. Well, it's funny. I didn't know Gary Vaynerchuk had written a book in the entrepreneurial space called Crushing It until after the fact. But yeah, and I've gone and redone the cover. So it's a illustration now. So that'll change, but it's a great story. It's a bit of a love story and overcoming addiction. And my hope is in writing this is, letting people know that anybody can have a drug addiction or struggle with alcoholism. And a lot of people out there die without knowing what an alcoholic even is, and it's so prevalent in our society. And especially during COVID, there was that narrative of even Tropicana. They got lit up by the sober community, but Tropicana orange juice had a campaign where, it was mommy juice, and she snuck off into the closet and was drinking a mimosa at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we're like, yo, you don't need to glamorize this. You don't need to drink to be able to parent your kid. This isn't it. But the reality is that the more we talk about it, this isn't 1935 anymore. And I appreciate there are a lot of people who still stay anonymous for certain reasons and everything, but I wear it like a badge of honor. It's been I get on a flight, people say, Miss Olson, would you like a glass of champagne? And I'm like, not unless you want me to bite your ear off or maybe try and screw you in the bathroom. It could really go either way. So how about we just play it safe and bring me a Coke Zero, even though I'm cutting that out because that's even worse. But
I love that you've taken your journey to here. Our journeys are given to us for a reason,
they
right?
are, absolutely. That gave me goosebumps. They really are. And that's like what you said earlier. Once you accept it and you look at it, and that's what's great about, working a 12-step program is you put the work in, you look at your inventory, the things that you're resentful at, why people, places, thing, what was your part in that? Because we play a part in everything, and what caused that. And then we, come up with a list of people that we've hurt. We work on our character defects and shortcomings, make amends with people, that we clean up our own side of the street, and it frees you from all of this emotional baggage. And then you build a spiritual life, where it's like, okay, there's got to be something else out there. We don't know what it is, but we don't question Wi-Fi. Do you know what I mean? You don't walk into Starbucks and be like, yeah, excuse me, Jana, before I use this and get the code, can you explain how that goes from that box up to the sky down into my phone? Because I don't really feel comfortable using it if I don't understand it. And it's like, because it has so much dogma attached to it. But truly, it's like the mother nature, the spirit of the universe, any entrepreneur who has read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, talking about the ether, quantum mechanics, we are all entangled and connected. And if we can just, I don't want to say just, because that's justifying, if we step into our power, own who we are, accept it, have the right perspective, and take this and decide, what, we've got to do something different and help everybody up along the way. And that's what I'll end on, is the thing that has helped me the most in this journey is realizing, even when I had that job making $400 to $500 an hour, to stand around and flex and be called a muscle goddess and literally just to be idolized by men who liked strong women, it was remarkable. That never gave me happiness. That never filled that void in my soul. It was just like I needed more. I needed to look better. I needed to work out harder. I needed more supplements. I needed to be tanner. And it wasn't until, getting into recovery and realizing that being of service is the number one way out of self-pity and out of self, because, I'm so focused on me, whereas it needs to be we. It's a we program. It's not a me or an I thing. And we forget that in civilization, and especially during post-COVID when we're all isolated. We don't have as many opportunities to be of service to other people. But as soon as we do and we have the opportunity, we remember that we are useful. And that is really the only thing that we're here for, is to be of service to other people and to feel love and to give love. And if we can keep it that simple and get past our own BS of this body image and this old paradigm, of trying to keep us held back and preoccupied with issues that aren't real issues. Because I will say, every man that I have ever asked has never, ever once, or anything that I've posted on social media, said that they care about what women think we think is important, And I know there are more than two genders. I'm keeping this very generalized, and I'm still learning a lot myself. I will be the first to put my hand up and say I have a lot of work to do in that area. But yeah, we are stepping into a new world, and it's exciting.
It is. I'm super excited to be here during that time. And I'm even more excited that I have two beautiful granddaughters who are experiencing this beautiful time. It's definitely challenging because change sometimes hurts.
Yes.
But change is good. So get through that pain. Like feeling that pain it's like working out, right? You get that little bird and you want to quit, but you're like, no, I just got to push through this.
That's
we just got to push through it because good things are happening.
And repetition is the mother of all skill. The first time you go in there and you lift that weight, it's going to feel super awkward. I've been working out for 20 years, and there'll be times where I'll sit on a machine backwards. The only thing people are thinking about in the gym is like, oh, what are other people thinking about me? They're not judging you. They're worrying that you're judging them, So you're right. Everything does feel awkward, but you just got to keep showing up, whether it's in business, at the gym, in your relationship. Just show up and do the next right thing. Keep it simple, be of service, and it makes it a lot easier.
Well, Courtney, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I absolutely love your message. We're going to link to your book and all your social media so people can connect with you. She's like a fireball. I love this woman because she just tells it like it is. So I love it.
Thank you. And hopefully you will have access to, there's a 8-week free watermelon crushing program that's on my website. If we post that somewhere, it's my goal is to teach all women and young girls to know that we have the power. Like, we are the powerful ones. We get to say what happens. And when you flip that switch, especially for any men listening, if you have a younger daughter, know that she will have that mindset of, oh, you want to come into my space uninvited? I dare you. Right? I dare you. Women are fierce. Like, we are fierce if we need to flip that switch, because historically we fought till death because we were protecting our children. We weren't fighting for chivalry, so encourage that in your daughters, encourage that in your spouses and in yourself, to know that you can still be feminine, but you make one wrong step in the wrong direction, it's going to be the worst decision you ever made.
I love that. That is a perfect message to leave it here. I hope all my granddaughters are listening. I hope my daughters are listening, because I want them to have that power. So thank you so much, Courtney.
Thank you so much. It's been great. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.